let's say I'm doing sets of 10 with 30, but my palms down, it's like way over double. That's a great way to say, oh my God, I've discovered a new weakness. Hey everyone, I'm Khalil Sharad here at ELITEFTS. So today we're gonna go over a few bodybuilding exercises. So I know you guys that are usually tuning in, you're meatheads and you're like, I don't care about the hypertrophy stuff. But what I found, and I always like to say to all my clients, is that great powerlifters have a lot of muscle. Great bodybuilders are usually pretty strong. So I want to stop bastardizing our accessories, okay? So one of the big keys that we always like to say is like a big carryover to our bench is our tricep pushdown. So we're first going to go over correct form and or just little things to keep it more in the tricep and keep it out of the shoulder, because that's usually what happens. So when I'm doing my tricep pushdowns, one of the big things I like to tell people is typically I like a slight bend in the knee, and I will bring down this bar right to about here. And I want to keep focusing on two things, which is keeping my elbows pinned as much as I can to my side and my shoulders back. Because if I let my shoulders round over, what's going to happen is every rep I'm initiating with that shoulder. So yes, I'll be to do more weight. And I'm just like, oh, cool, I max out on my pushdown. But if half the rep is shoulder, how much less are we getting now in our triceps? So I want to keep these elbows back, shoulders back, and I'm going to keep the palms down. I'm going to try not to bend at the wrists, and I'm going to try to lock out every rep. So even if I'm not doing like a tempo of like 2 up, 2 down, I'm always going to try to lock it out for at least a half a second, because then I'm actually flexing that tricep. And this is a big carryover, because you can make it, especially if you want to go even wider, use a bigger bar, but it's going to be that same, almost the same exact movement that you're going to be using your triceps in the bench, right? And it's going to be hitting that inner head of the tricep that most people have pain in from benching. And it's usually because they only work that outer lazy head of the tricep. So if you want to be a big bencher, you got to work the inner tricep. And it's also going to be just a big thing to protect your elbows. So hopefully when you're benching in the 400s or 500s, your elbows are actually prepared for that. Just like we do a lot of single leg work, we want to also do single arm work, whether that be rowing, pressing, or doing extensions. So, and I really love doing the single arm work when it comes to extensions, because you can see in your bench, if you're a person that maybe locks out one side of the bar before the other, or you just maybe have pain, or you notice one arm is slightly bigger, the only real way you're going to raise that is by doing single arm work. So one of my favorite things to do is that not just doing that straight arm with that pronated grip, right? I like to do a supinated, or you can do, I guess, technically what would be a neutral cross body. But the reason why is because you're going to see that you're significantly weaker when you do your palms up. And if it's like, let's say like right now, let's say I'm doing sets of 10 with 30, but my palms down, it's like way over double. That's a great way to say, oh my God, I've discovered a new weakness. We shouldn't get sad about that. We should say, oh, that's exciting, because if I bring that up, like I said earlier, maybe my elbow will be healthier, but maybe I'm going to get a whole bunch of boost in strength. So big things, just like before, but even more so now. In this grip, this supinated grip, you want to make sure your shoulder's back, but now try to pay attention to excessive leaning to try to finish it out. Because what will happen is as you get tired, you'll start here, and then you'll start going like this. And a lot of times you'll even feel almost your lat kicking in to finish it out, right? So Noah behind the camera, we did this the last 2 weeks, and even sometimes I'd say the last 2 reps, sometimes we would go like that. Now, if 80% of your reps are like an A+, and the last 2 are like, you know, B-, that's okay. But what you don't want to do is do that. You don't want to see that, okay? So you can even do like, I sometimes will do a drop set, where instead of dropping the weight, I may start off with the supinated grip, and then maybe I do a cross body, and then I finish with my strongest grip, a pronated grip. Okay, so staying on the theme of exercises that we BS through a lot of times, especially as lifters, is lat pull downs. And I think a big reason that people don't see good growth or good stimulus from getting their lat pull downs like they would do any type of row is because it's super easy to cheat. So setup wise, first thing you always want to do is that you want to have the thigh pad glued so you don't go like this as you're going back and forth. So if that locks you down, that's like the first good thing. Then second, when I go up to grab the bar, I want to make sure no matter how wide I'm going, so this one's actually a permanent flipped up, and that's fine. But I want to make sure I'm even with both sides, so make sure that we don't further emphasis one side that's stronger doing more of the work. All right, so once I get down here, I like there's two ways of thought. You can have it where every rep you start by depressing that scapula first and then pulling down, right? I'm okay if you don't start every rep like that. The bigger thing is that you don't want momentum into every rep. Now, let's say you're in your power block phase, or you're peaking for a meet and you're trying to basically do heavy sets of 6 to 8, fine. But if the majority of your lat work is to grow and the majority of the time you're swinging, how much is it just bicep and shoulder than it is lat, right? And that's what we want. So I'm gonna try to make sure I keep my chest up. There's gonna be a slight arch in my upper back and I'm leaning back. I'm rowing to about middle of my chest. And when I'm rowing, I'm trying not to pull more with my bicep or initiate with my shoulder, just like we did the extension. I'm trying to keep my shoulder blades relatively down the entire time and trying to pull down using my lats. So when I think of the start of the pull and the finish of the pull, I'm thinking of I'm pulling down with my lats. If you literally think like that, it'll cut down a lot of weight, but you'll also get more burn, right? And I think another big cue, one of my former coaches that used to coach me, Joe Lasco, he used to tell me on a lot of rows, think of rowing more with your pinky than you do with your trigger finger. Why? Is because if you pull more with your trigger finger, you're going to use more bicep. If you pull more with your pinky, you're actually going to engage more lower lat, which means you're going to get more out of the exercise. So I'm pulling more with that pinky. One of my favorite tempos is doing a 2-0-2 or 3-0-3, meaning like 2 down, 1, 2 up. You can even throw a pause in there, but going this slow, especially on the concentric. So for this exercise, that means pulling down. I am really forced to use my lats instead of momentum and using my shoulder and bicep. And that's why, a lot of times people put back and biceps on the same day, because yes, you inherently get a lot of bicep work when you do your lat pull down. You just don't want it to be 50-50. It should be more like 80% is lats, 20% is bicep, just because I'm going to be gripping the bar or whatever, So now we're going to talk about the pec deck. So a lot of times when people do this exercise, a lot of times they'll say they'll feel it more in their shoulder. And oftentimes it's a combo of the setup is wrong and or they're doing too much weight. And I also would say, I don't think I ever am not doing a tempo on these ones, because it's not at all really for strength. It's really just to grow the pecs, get some activation, get some blood flow in there and open it up, compared to a lot of times that we're talking lifters, we're stuck always here. And then all of a sudden we go overhead, our arms go out wide and there's all this pain, right? So when I sit down, now you see these, it may not look it, but then when I push this up, I'm gonna have my hands about shoulder length. I'm gonna have this set up so it starts slightly behind where I'm actually gonna be doing the movement, because during the exercise, I'm not gonna go this far back, right? Then as I pull, you can play around with your hand position, but what I like to say is think of from the start, like I'm trying to squeeze those pecs together, or I'm trying to squeeze an acorn together, right? And I think the fastest you probably should be going on this is maybe about this speed. Anything faster, you're using momentum, and what's gonna happen is maybe at the very end, you finally squeeze your pecs just a tad. But what people forget is that, especially if you're going slow in and out, you're getting a stretch on this way, which we know loaded stretching is big. And then on the way, you're not using any momentum, so you're actually using your pec the entire time. It's really easy to just end up using our bicep and our shoulder to get through. Another good thing is that try it with one arm and see, like right now, I flex my pec way harder if I just use one, right? So I'm really trying to build that mind-muscle connection. And the funny thing is, I'm just noticing this actually myself, you can go a little farther and you can get an even bigger squeeze on that outer part of your pec, right? And then you have one that's like this, you can even do a palms down grip. And that's gonna work maybe a little bit more top of the chest, right? If you go bottom of the handle, that's gonna work a little bit lower chest. And when we do that, you wanna think of if I'm pulling my hands upward, the machine won't let me, but now I'm gonna get a little bit lower pec. So those are just some tips to make sure that when you do the pec deck, you're not further hurting your shoulder, you're actually working your pecs. One of my favorite exercises to pinpoint that people really mess up is the leg extension. So I think any of the exercises that we're talking about today, the ones that are the easiest to load up are usually the ones that people use super momentum, don't get as much burn as they say, and sometimes even actually further injury, even though the machine technically should make it easier not to get hurt. So when I'm always worried about was when people do leg extensions is that I like to say they're just doing patella snaps. So instead of using your ACL and your patella to get up the weight, we really want to be working that teardrop. And if we're really doing it properly, you can even get more upper quad. So when I get into this leg extension, we want to make sure typically that the crease of that knee is hugging into the pad. So depending on what brand you have, you got to find your adjustment. So if you go to different gyms, you may have to do different setups. Okay. Now, whatever weight I'm doing and whatever the rep range, especially on this exercise, because I think it's really easy to damage the knee, I want to focus that I'm using control. So even if I'm doing like a 1-1-1 tempo, so just one up, one pause, one down, I really want to make sure that I feel like I'm actually pulling with my quad. And I like to say, no matter what, your teardrop is gonna get burned. But if I focus on trying to actually pull with my upper quad, now almost my whole leg will get destroyed, okay? And so when I pull that up, and then all of a sudden, and then I flex, especially at the top, at least for a second, I get a much better squeeze and I involve more of the quad. Remember, the quad is for 4. If I'm only working 1 of the 4, that's not as good as 2 or 3, right? Another good thing to play with is your foot position. So you can do turn the toe out and you'll find you'll work more inner, right? If you turn the toes straight, a little bit more on top, right? And if you turn the toes forward, which most people never try, you'll find you're significantly weaker, but you work the quad even in another different way. So you could even do like a set toes forward, a set toes pointed upward, a set toes pointed out. You can even do, I'm not gonna show you now, but you can even push the seat back more, lean back as you pull up, and you'll get more of that upper quad. Even me just leaning back, I feel that a little bit more. Because when you go here, I think what happens is you shut off the upper quad and you basically just work the teardrop, which there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking to get a little bit more out of your leg extension or just switch it up, try those tips.